let's get into this because this is, as I said, a really important topic. And I just want to remind us that we do get hijacked all of the time by other people. Requests on our time and energy can hijack us, especially if we're someone that's generous and we like to give out a lot of energy. So people asking us stuff sometimes can hijack our energy. Comments on social media can hijack our energy, not just if we're running a business, but personally. I've seen this happen a lot in social media, which is why if there's any sort of negative vibrational energy around any of my posts, I just kind of like switch out to it and I just don't engage in it. It can be very hijacking. What people say about us can hijack us, whether they have an opinion or a judgment or people's comments about the world. I had someone sign up to a class recently and ask me whether, this has really surprised me actually. This beautiful woman said, "Oh, I'm Israeli. Can I join your class?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Oh, well, at the moment with the war going on and everything, and I don't know whether I'm accepted." And I'm like, whoa, that's like so, there's so much kind of conflict around beliefs and systems and countries and war and social media and politics, religious beliefs, politics, all of these things can really hijack us. And so what happens is we're sort of going out into the world and, these things that hijack us. I get hijacked if I see animal cruelty on social media. It kind of like really confronts me. So it's just interesting what hijacks our energy. However, oh, and think about how hijacked everyone was with this debate. Like, regardless of your viewpoints. I couldn't believe how everyone was so jacked up. There's someone else entering. Everyone was so jacked up by these two people, whether you were in their country or not. So I'm in Australia. This was an American politics, election. I couldn't believe how much fighting in my country was around this election. And all I can say was, everyone was having tantrums about their belief systems and what meant what. And made me realize that we are getting hijacked by other people all the time. People don't even know. I don't know these two candidates personally. Why would I let them hijack me? So this was a really interesting experiment around why do we get so caught up in everyone else's game and opinions when really we're in command of those ultimately. So let's talk about that. So the most toxic impact on your energy usually comes from someone else really interfering with your energy. And you can have healthy or unhealthy cords to people. We don't want to ruin the healthy ones or the healthy, connections, but the unhealthy ones can really create havoc in our system. And they can linger long after we've had an experience with someone. So I was working with someone, you might have heard this story already, but she had been broken up from her fiance for 12 years and she was remarried with children. So she'd like had a long-term relationship breakup, pretty hectic situation. And she was married, she had two kids, and she was telling me she was dreaming about this person most nights. 12 years later. And I was like, whoa. And that came down to an ongoing, like, toxic conflict core that just hadn't been let go at the time. And that's, more the rarity. Hopefully people don't have that experience, but it can happen. Like when you have a cord with someone, healthy is good, unhealthy can take its toll, and it can happen long after you finished meeting or connecting with that person. So it doesn't have to be that you're still in relationship to them. So knowing that when it comes to other people, we want to keep healthy cords and connections and we want to release toxic ones. And you are in command of that always. You do not need the permission of the other to let go. So it ends up being a game of unraveling. To get into our full power and health, we want to unravel these toxic relationship cords. And whether you let that person go or you still stay in some sort of relationship, you can still let that go. So letting toxic relationship conflict go doesn't mean breaking up with someone, stop seeing them if they're in your family, like Marcy said. It just means that you're changing the way that you're relating to that person and you're taking your power back. And it does come down to a few key things. So if you think about the physical world, we can keep a distance from someone, we can unfriend people on social media, we can get support, talk it out, we can end a marriage contract, a work contract, we can break up with a friend. But that doesn't deal with the feelings, the energetics, and the deep stuff. So you can do all those physical practices, which, might or might not be right. For example, it might not be appropriate to unfriend someone on a social media channel if they're a friend of a friend. You know, you can still do that. But the metaphysical ties up messes, resolves karma, sets healthy energetic boundaries, teaches you evolutionary lessons, allows you to revoke or reverse agreements, and lets you work on your shadow. Because if you think about it, conflict and with another and toxic relationships is always, always teaching you about your shadow. If you didn't have a shadow, you wouldn't have a toxic relationship. There's something around a shadow that still exists to attract in and have a toxic relationship. Now, that doesn't mean that if that person's a really awful, nasty person, it doesn't mean that it's your fault. It just says there's a reason they've come into your field and into your energetic field, and you've got to work it out. So, today we are going to look at some of these metaphysical concepts around what it is that we do, how can we look at it differently, how can we resolve it, because you can resolve it yourself without even needing to have an altercation with someone else. And my feeling is, if there is one thing you need to learn as a human in this life, it's to uncage yourself, come out of that cage, which is freeing yourself up from any toxic connections to other people, things, or spaces. Because, being energetically free is about unbinding and unentangling from others and other things that are holding your energy in a poor vibration, including your own habits, of course. Because it does dampen your light globe. Let's face it, I'm not immune to it. If I have an unhealthy relationship with someone, I am affected. It's not like I sit around and just go, oh, that's good. It's not great to have that in your life. So the more that you can handle it energetically, the better life becomes. So we're going to look at three approaches today. And some of these things, some of you have already learned and seen, and some of them might be like a reminder or a renewal. It's really important to go, what are the approaches I can take? And Marcy asked a great question about family members. Family members are the hardest because you don't normally fire your family. They're normally around whether you like it or not. Now, you can fire a family member. You can totally break up with a family member if you feel you need to. And I did do that with my father. He was an extremely, extremely toxic, quite a violent man. So I did end up breaking up and firing him from the family, from my relationships. But that's rare. Like, usually you kind of work it out another way. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first one is it's called holding your shape. Now, you guys have probably all heard this on some level, but I want to really reiterate it. Your energetic boundaries, you've got to remember you are sitting in a field of energy. You're always in your own field of energy. And you can see this image. There's like a bubble of energy around you, and it's governed by, what your values are, what ethics you have, the code of how you want to live, and your beliefs. It's around how you want to see and feel and exist in the world. If you don't know what those things are, then you don't know how to hold your shape. So, for example, if you're not clear on how you want to show up and what's important to you and what matters, then it's very hard for you then interact with someone else and go, oh, I know where my boundaries and where I say yes and no to are. I know how I want to show up. If I don't know that, then I'm going to be kind of like twisted and contorted by other people. So other people are going to have their stronger beliefs or their stronger needs overrule mine if I don't know what mine are. So the clearer you are on who you are, what you stand for, how you want to show up, and what's important to you, the less people can actually affect you. So it starts with awareness. The first question you'd want to know is what nourishes me, what fills me up. Because I can tell you now, if you're like Marcy and you've got family members that are not great, if you show up with your tank half full and you're tired or undernourished or not fed properly, you will not cope as well. So it's almost like if you feel good and energized and full of energy, then you're going to show up in a much better space and your energy boundaries will be stronger. So if you're tired, underfed, if you're hangry, that's one of mine. If I'm hangry, that's not going to work. If I'm not like looking after myself, if I'm not saying yes and no honestly, then I'm going to show up in a weakened state, and therefore people are going to bounce me around more in the world. It's just a fact. If I don't know what matters to me, then how do I know what to say yes and no to? So if a family member or someone is asking something of me that is against what I believe or wish or want or matters to me, I can clearly say no. And we'll talk about how to say no elegantly as opposed to aggressively. we also need to be aware of who or what is bending me out of shape. So is it my job? Is it a friend? Is it something? So if it's someone else, then I want to know why. Because if someone's bending me out of shape or making me feel a certain way or creating a toxicity, then there's something in me unresolved. There's something in me that's allowing that because it is an allowance. I can say the same thing to 10 different people, and nine will take it one way and one will take it another way. So, it's up to you to go, you're the meaning maker. Like, why are they bending me out of shape? Why is it getting to me? Because you don't need someone to be a certain way for you to be okay. And in fact, if you do need them to be a certain way for you to be okay, then you've lost the game because you can't control it. So, if you think of someone that's upsetting you right now or irritating you, the biggest question you need to say is why? What behavior are they displaying or doing that's showing me something unresolved in myself? That's different to they actually have really, really low vibe values. They're not a good person. I don't want to hang out with them. That's different. If you feel like they're a really low quality human, then you just don't hang out with them. That's just as simple as that. But if there is someone in your family that are fence sitters or friends that sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, you need to figure out why are you getting impacted by that person because it's trying to teach you something around well, there's a lot of lessons, we'll go through them, but it's teaching you something about yourself. And when you resolve that, it won't bother you. I'll give you a great example. When I was in my corporate job, before I even became, really into this work, because I was so burnt out and stressed out, and I was very like beta brain corporate. I used to go to a meditation class. That was my very early foray. I was in my mid 20s, and I was trying to, come down to a more relaxed level. And there was this girl in the class that used to bother the crap out of me. And I tell you why, because she was so feminine and so relaxed and dreamy and slow and connected. And I was like, come on, like, let's move on with this stuff. I was like, I've got time, I've got an hour to be in this meditation class and then I've got to go. And because I was so amped up in the yang, I couldn't drop into the yin. And she would just irritate me, like she'd take too long to talk about her meditations or she'd be really slow. And I started going, what is it bothering me about her? She's a beautiful person. And I realized that she was showing me that I wasn't connected to my feminine. She was showing me how stressed and hyped up I was and how I couldn't relax. She's one of my really good friends now. She became a really good friend. In fact, I love her energy now. It's because I've dropped to a different level and she wasn't irritating me anymore. And I think that's a really good lesson around when someone really irritates you or you're having conflict. I'm not saying that you need to be more like them. I'm just saying there's something out of shape within you that needs a resolution. And it could be as something as simple as putting your better boundaries in place.
Debbie, can I just
Yeah.
jump in there for two
Yeah.
seconds?
Yeah.
Because what you said is golden shadow. Something you see that within that feeling within somebody else, and it's you need to manifest that and bring it out in yourself. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what you did, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I did. Now,
Mm.
I can also have conflicts with people where I'm irritated because there's something unresolved with my ability to face that problem or issue as well. So there's lots of things, but if someone does create that tension, yes, Chrissy, it can be that you need to develop that quality, or it could be that you have that quality and you hate it about yourself. That's the opposite. So if someone's being really arrogant, maybe there's part of you that feels that way. Or if someone's being really victim like, maybe that's you. So there's also the opposite where what they're showing is showing you something ugly about yourself. There's so much around that. It's really interesting. So
Debbie,
yes,
oh, sorry, just
yes.
quickly. At what point did you realize that that was the issue? Like, was it, during
About
the time
six
that you were
months,
in,
about 6 months into the meditation class.
yeah,
Yeah,
because you were
yeah.
were you starting to get more in
Mhm.
the flow and in
Yeah,
the realization
yeah,
yourself of, yeah, no, because I completely was curious, right? Because the
yes.
corporate mindset can be like
Well,
jarring.
think about it. I was at board level advertising. I was working 16 hours a day. I had a big team. I had hundreds of millions of dollars going through my hands, and I was trying to get an hour in my evening on the one night I had off to go and try and relax. and I'd go there like fully upped, and
Yeah.
there was this rainbows and unicorns girl, and she was just so beautiful and relaxed. And like, I didn't know at the time, but it was like really showing me how bent out of whack I was. Yeah. So yeah, it took me a while. As I said, she became one of my best friends.
That's-
And she still does. She's in arts and culture. She mixes bush flowers. She's so dreamy. And yeah, that was very funny. But it took me a time, took me some time to really like work with it within myself. Yeah.
Debbie, can I just
Yeah.
ask?
Yes.
Iris and I have had this discussion. Somebody triggers something with you, and just say if it's like arrogance, but you don't believe that you're arrogant yourself, but it still bothers you. We're
Yep.
trying to work around that.
What is that?
We're acknowledging that there's something in it that's affecting us, but we can't work out what it
Yeah,
is.
I can tell you what it is.
Okay.
It's either that you have it in yourself, but in this case you don't. What you're then looking at is you're annoyed with their confidence. And there's something about you that doesn't have that level of boldness or confidence. So again, it's a quality that you kind of want, but you don't want it in the arrogant sense. So they're showing you something that's unresolved, because arrogant people don't irritate me at
Mm.
all. I can sense that they're arrogant maybe, but I don't even think about it. Whereas if it's something unresolved in you, so usually when you see someone really overtly confident, if it really bothers you, it's usually because there's maybe a bit of insecurity in there, and so they're showing you a deficit.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
We've
there's
had this
something they're
discussion.
showing you. Yeah,
Yeah, it may not necessarily be arrogance, but we've had this that we don't believe we've got it, but it is still bothering us. Yeah.
yeah, because there's part of you that maybe isn't stepping up in your life somewhere where you feel more powerful.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's so, I promise you it's there, because um this is going to sound weird, but someone like Trump, he's such a great character because he bugs the crap out of it. He doesn't bother me, and it's, I know he's sexist and I know he's got all this stuff going on, but he doesn't bother me. He just doesn't even touch the sides. So you've got to
Yeah.
think about what is there that's actually really bothering you, because there's something in there that's like bubbling around. And when I say it doesn't bother me, I'm not, it doesn't mean I like him or not like him. It's more just, does it irritate me? And we'll talk about this word called shempa, this sizzle. If something sizzles away at you and like gets under your skin, there's a problem there. There's a shadow. If you just go, oh, they're a jerk, like that's different. Or, "Oh, I don't want to hang out with them. They're not cool." That's different. But if something sizzles at you, there's an issue in there.
I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes. Hi,
Hi.
Angela.
Hi. I just have a quick one. Say you have a friend that's in an abusive relationship and that person you have a problem with because of how they are treating your friend. Is that still a reflection within? Just
No.
where's the difference there?
So the difference is you can still recognize that that person is abusive and say, I don't love that person, that they don't fit my values. That's not cool. That's different. Where
Okay.
you're getting bothered is your friend's way of dealing with that. That's really what's
Gotcha.
bothering you. It's not, I mean, yes, the person could be not a great person, but it's actually the way your friend's dealing with it.
Friend is dealing with it or you okay.
So
That's great.
if you
Thank you
can
for that.
actually, if you can actually say to your friend, do you want me to seriously help you out of this abusive relationship? Call it out. Do you want me to help you out of this abusive relationship, or do you want me to just patch you up when you're feeling crap? To get a
Okay.
decision out of them, and then be okay with whatever decision they make. Because what happens is we have this thing of, I need to get my friend out of this situation, and we'll talk about this in a minute.
Okay.
Therefore, the pressure comes into you, therefore it sizzles you up. But if your
So
friend
it's
says, no, I'm going to stay in this abusive relationship, can you just patch me up when I'm wounded? Great, then you know what your role is.
right. Thank you for that. I
Yeah,
appreciate that difference and
yeah.
reflection.
It's a very, you don't want to hold the stress. Yeah, thanks, Angela.
Right.
So,
Oh,
yes,
so
anyone
can
else?
I just ask something just it's more simplistic in that like the girl I agist with, she never unrugs a horse and they're in the boiling sun and that just pisses me off big time. So is that, how's that an issue reflecting on what I don't do?
So I can identify with that because I have an issue with horse rugging when it's hot. too. So my thought on that is that you can be concerned about it and voice it,
Yeah.
and then take right action. So you could say to her, hey, I've noticed that, sometimes you can't get out to the adjustment facility and change out your rug. Would you like me to help you with that?
Yeah. I mean, we're both living on the same place with the horses in our front yard. And I'll just go, listen,
So ask to help.
I'll just say to her, I'm just going to unrug your horse. Is that okay? Yep, that'll be great. Thank you.
So then leave it at that. For you
Okay.
to be then irritated means that you're holding the strain and stress for her. So she's doing the wrong thing by her animal, maybe, but then you're then going the extra level and holding the stress. So
Yeah.
why not be concerned about the animal but not hold the stress and offer to fix it? Now, if you're like me, because I wasn't in an adjustment facility, I had a case where this horse had its rug all twisted and it was like, really dangerous. So I just went and fixed the horse myself. And now I don't know if anyone knows this, but you don't touch other people's horses in adjustment facilities normally. And I went right action in the right moment. The horse was going to have an accident. Um, so
I've done the same with what the horses are, their hoods over their face and they can't see. I mean, it's a safety
so
issue.
that's right action in the right moment. But what I would say is with that person that's bothering you, rather than let it sizzle you,
Yeah.
just go, do you mind if I help your horse sometimes? And she's going to go, yeah. And you're going to go, cool, problem solved.
Yeah.
You do need to know your shape, what your yes and no's are, where your edges sit, where your ethics sit. A little bit like Nicole was saying, she doesn't feel good about her partner, her friend's partner. Her ethics say, I don't want to hang out with this guy. I'm going to hang out with my friend alone outside the house. Good. Know your shape. Hold your shape. Holding it says, I back my yeses and nos. So rather than Nicole going, oh, I'm going to sit in there and, be in this awful company of this guy. No, I'm just going to like back up my yeses and nos and meet outside the home. I'm going to keep my word to myself. I'm going to be loyal to myself. I'm going to practice the law of commitment. I'm going to practice the law of action. I'm going to say if something's bothering me, because you can still say something's bothering you without being hijacked or having a toxic relationship. We'll talk about how that works in a minute. So it's dealing with being awkward. I think we're so not used to being awkward. Like we're not used to having awkward conversations. We're not used to saying no in a way that's easy. And so the reason why relationships become conflicting and toxic to us is because we don't actually take time to feel fearful or awkward or back ourselves. Because if we did, there wouldn't be nearly as many sizzles going on in our life. So we can say no to someone by saying no, absolutely not. These are all aggressive no's. I can't believe you asked that. How do you expect me to change that rug? That's not my job. Like you can say all kinds of like no's aggressively. Go away. I'm so overloaded, or panic. No. So we can say no in that way, and sometimes we're required to say no more aggressively if someone's threatening us, for sure. But we can say no in a supportive way, is I can't right now, or let me think and get back to you, or I'm not sure I can make that work, or I'll consider, when I can schedule it in and message you later, or after this project, I'll review it. Is anyone else free to help you? Or I can't offer that support. However, if things change, I'll let you know. Like you can say things in such an easy way to say no to things, as long as you say no, and it doesn't have to be aggressive. Or if you feel like you want to just say, hey, no, that's not going to work. No, no. But I think the more that we understand how to hold our shape, the less we get into these toxic relationships, because a lot of the time that they become toxic is because we don't say no, or we allow the behavior, or we sit there with the sizzle and we don't address it. We don't have to ever address a sizzle with someone else. We only have to address it within ourselves. Of course, you can ask someone something, but whether they'll do it is a 50-50. So the cost of not actually holding your shape means that you will become drained and tired. So the reason our relationships become toxic is we become toxic with them and we don't actually address them. And the biggest reason we do this is because people can't figure out what is mine versus theirs or mine versus yours. So many of us take way too much responsibility for others and their shape. So we're trying to hold our shape, we're trying to stay true to ourselves and get our needs met. But then we when conflict happens or when something happens, we take too much responsibility for the other. And that's what really happens. Like Kim was saying about too much responsibility for her horse, adjustment buddy, because she was, worried about the horse. And that's a legitimate concern, but it's too much responsibility. So when a conflict arises with someone, we often get drawn into trying to work out their mess alongside our own. So we might say something, we might ask for something, it might feel awkward. And then instead of just leaving it there as awkwardness or, saying no, we then try and soothe it or make it okay. It's like Marcy's like the family members. Maybe Marcy just needs to let it be okay that they're awkward. Why not let them sit in their awkwardness? Why not let the relationship be a bit patchy? Does it have to be perfect and movie like? Or maybe it's just a patchy relationship. So one of my clients had she's into alternative healing and all of her family are lawyers and doctors. And they give her a really hard time because they're all into like these high academic programs and she's very alternative. She goes, "Oh, I have these really, unhealthy relationships when I go home." And I go, "Oh, well, do you have anything in common with your family?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "What is it?" She said, "Oh, gardening." I said, "What else?" And she goes, "Oh, we talk about real estate." And I'm like, "Cool." I said, "Why don't you go home and just talk about gardening and real estate and leave everything else off the table?" I said, "Why don't you just connect with what does work and know that there's patchy, awkward gaps with alternative healing or your viewpoints? Why do you have to have everything in line?" And she started practicing that where she didn't go home and try and talk about her work or alternative healing. She just went and spoke to them about what they were both comfortable talking about. And she said that the relationship with her dad really changed and things became easier. So, one of the things around relationships is you need to get space and move back out of the energy field to get some sort of release from toxicity. So, if there is some sort of conflict going, you take a space, you step back, and you practice some of these spiritual rules, like I'm not responsible for your awkward feelings. Simple as that. So, someone might not like what you do for a career, they might not like the choices that you've made. They might not like that you're supporting someone else in the family and they're unhappy about that. They might not like that you're not there as much for them as they want you to be. If you just have that simple rule as I'm not responsible for you to feel okay, that automatically disconnects you from their energy field. You then layer in, I don't give you permission to hijack me. I don't need to be a certain way for you to be okay. I'm not going to bend out of my shape so that you feel good. If I want to extend some support, that's fine, but I don't have to actually bend out of shape for you to like me or for you to actually be okay. And for everyone that triggers me, I need to take some time to find out why. I can like what Marcy was saying before about arrogance, or why is that bothering me? Why is it getting under my skin? Because it's your biggest evolutionary change. Like if you can figure out why these little triggers are happening, you'll actually start to unpack and unravel all of the rough edges in your life. Because people only come in as catalysts to bring up and dredge up shadow. And the other thing is get space before you're trying to fix anything. So if you are being triggered by someone, trying to be solution focused, like I have to fix it or sort it out or resolve it, it doesn't actually solve it. You step back, you practice a little bit of compassion, which we'll talk about later, and then you just start to have an intention that you don't need to fix it right now, that you can give it some space and that you can let them feel awkward or even yourself feel awkward and just let that sit for a while, because that is the start of a healing process. It's awkward. I don't feel good. I'm being challenged. Anyone want to ask anything on what I just said or talk to their experience before I start sharing some more? Because there's a lot that I just said then.
With the being solution focused doesn't solve the relationship. I've got a complicated relationship with my father to the point where he lies and then he believes his own lies. And he, other people, professional people have spoken to him. He's in a nursing home. They've overheard some of the stuff that he said, and they've said after I've left, that's not right what you've said to Marcia. It's to do with a will, and I was an executor, and he wanted me to give the money to him, but it wasn't left to him. And I said I had to do it according to the will. And, the nurse heard that and she said Marcia had no option. He still, years on, is now still angry.
With you?
Yeah,
So
because
let
I
him be
did.
angry with you.
Yeah, and I am. But I guess he's getting to end of his life. I don't want to be fighting with a 90-year-old man, but I can't see how I could resolve that.
Do you have to resolve it?
I don't know. One part of me, the decent part, well, the good girl, wants to be
The people pleaser.
the people pleaser, wants to be happy with everyone. I just think it would be a shame for him to pass, that we are angry with each other, but I can't
But are
see.
you angry with him or is he angry with you?
He's angry with me. Yeah.
Okay, so that's his call. He's
I'm
allowed to
probably
be.
angry. I'm angry with him for being an asshole
Yeah, there
about
you
it.
go. Okay, that's different. So
Mm,
he's allowed to be angry. Your
mm,
90-year-old dad's allowed to be angry. That's his call. You're
mm,
not responsible for him being angry. Of course, you'd like him not to be, but that's
mm.
his call. I'm more worried about how you feel about it. Are you guilty or are you angry back at him?
Oh, I'm not. I'm just disappointed that
Right.
that we haven't got this. You have the ideal father, which you probably had with your father. That you'd like to have that. I'm just disappointed that end of life and he's like this, and
Yeah.
it's the memory I'm carrying of him.
Yeah. So in that case, if I was coaching someone like you, Marcy, I would say, well, you can't change how he is. You can only change the way that you feel about it. So, yes, you might go see him and he might have that disposition. But what about if you meditated with him and talked to him in spirit? Because his spirit doesn't feel
Yeah,
angry. It's his human personality.
yeah,
So there is this acceptance of, I accept you as you are. I don't need to fix you or change you. I accept you're angry from whatever mindset you're in or whatever, but I choose to actually be in love and peace with you, and I'll show up in a way that honors me because I don't
yeah.
want to break my shape because my shape is loving and supportive.
Mm,
If I find I go there and he starts abusing me, then I'll step back and I'll have conversations with him in spirit and not in personality.
okay, that's
You know,
great. Thank you, Deb. That's
yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's still that connection. You can talk to the higher self of your dad or the spirit of your dad and still have a beautiful connection.
Mm,
But the physical personality of him is contorted to a point where he's at where he's at, but you can't change him because the
mm,
next few slides will show you that, but you can't change him and nor should you.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to ask about that? Because it sort of comes up in a minute about, for those of you that have done my coaching course, you'll see a couple of similar slides, but yeah, it's a really interesting one about not trying to fix what anyone is thinking or feeling. You can't control it. And we'll tell you why in a minute. But it's interesting thing about what Marcy just said. Like, I'm not saying that you are the people pleasing, but the people pleasing shadow is that you want people to feel good and you want people to feel excited and you want a good connection. There's not a problem with that. You can still be a beautiful and generous person, but not be the people pleasing, not be the controller, and not trying to fix anyone else. Because it's a beautiful quality to want harmony and love and connection. That's a normal, healthy, functional thing to want. What's not normal is when it comes into a people pleasing shadow, or you put yourself second, or you put up with abuse. That's when it becomes an issue. So if you actually look at, I won't go through everything, but if you look at the two sides of this table, the generous person is kind and thoughtful, but a people pleaser actually is kind, but then takes away from self. So the kindness actually impacts on their ability to look after themselves. Um, Someone who's generous understands their values and lives to their values, whereas people pleasers often clash with their own values because they're actually doing something outside of their shape. That they're trying to please at the expense of their own values. It's energizing to be generous. It's draining to be people pleasing. People that are generous operate when their tank's already full or at least half filled up. People pleasers are often at the expense of them having a low fuel tank. They're tired, but they still do it. Generous, kind to self and others. People pleasing, kind just to others. Generous, I can receive back. People pleasers mostly give out. Generous, I hold equal status with you. People pleasers, I'm a little bit humble. I have to serve you. Generous comes from the heart. I think people pleasing comes more from the head and a bit of heart. I think there's an intention of the heart, but they think that they've got to in their mind. Generous wants to, people pleasing thinks they should. Generous establishes from the heart, people pleasing assumes lack. I've got to do something because they don't have enough or there's something missing. And people pleasing starts with failure in mind. Generous people starts with success in mind. So it's just an interesting way to think about it. And I'm not saying that you guys are doing this. It's just that's what happens a lot. People think they need to control or fix or offer up, but it's at the expense of self. Therefore, it actually doesn't help the relationship. It creates a more toxic situation because it's out of balance for both parties. And so what happens is when we start to get triggered by others, there's this great Buddhist term called Shempa, which is like a little sizzle. And what happens is that little sizzle sits underneath, and we know the difference between a sizzle versus versus you just not liking something or having a values clash, because long after you've had that conflict with someone, it sizzles within you. So you can have a conflict with someone, be annoyed. That's a perfectly human emotion. But if you then take it away and the next day and the next day and the next day, it sizzles within you, it starts to like grind away, then you know that something's been touched in your system or your field that actually is bigger than just that conflict. So there's something sitting in there that's like eating away at you. Now, the problem with that is I don't want that for you, because long after the conflict's finished or the trauma or the event, you're holding this stress. The other person probably isn't, or if they are, that's up to them, right? But you're holding this energy, and that will eat away at your field. It will start to kind of like eat away at your energy source and supply. It's like it will eat your fuel tank. So what we want to do is really figure out what the lesson is. So we have to start having this chat with the quantum field. We have to sort of go, I don't want this experience again. I don't agree with this experience. It's not how I want to do life. So I have to look at my evolutionary lesson, like what is my shadow, what is my lesson? Because if I don't get it, I'll repeat it again and again. I don't want another class. I don't want another round. I don't want to experience this again. But if I don't understand it, I will. It'll sit in the field and it will replay like a repeat button until I actually go to the source and I start to have an issue. So that's really important. Yeah, did someone just ask a question before in the chat? Do you have to ask permission? Oh, that's an old, sorry about that, Kim. Yeah, no, you don't have to ask permission to talk to their higher self. You can just talk straight to it. So yeah, you will get the lesson again and again if you don't get it. So in Marcy's situation, there's something she needs to understand about the lesson she's getting from her father before she'll actually be able to let that go. And it could be something along the lines of, I don't need everything to be picture perfect to have a relationship with my dad, or I don't need someone to act a certain way for me to be okay. Because if she needs her dad to actually feel different for her to be okay, then she's been hijacked. It means someone else is responsible for her not being okay. And the only person that is ultimately responsible for you is you. You want to rely on the outside world making you okay? Good luck. You're going to get a 50-50 every time. Half the time it'll work out, half the time it won't. So if you actually think about hijacking, let's talk about this, because this is the next few slides are big. So your call to action if you're having outstanding conflict is, are you missing a lesson and getting this same pattern? Because you'll get it again. It'll be annoying. You get it again until it fixes itself. So in this situation, this is a perfect example with Marcy's dad, is where he is and where you want him to be is a gap. The gap is the stress. That's as simple as that. If someone's projecting at you and trying to argue with you, the best outcome you could ever say is acknowledged and understood. And they're like, well, what do you have to say? Oh, I acknowledge what you're saying. I understand. I don't have a comment. And if they want you to argue, I acknowledge what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. No comment. You want to take the fire out of having to argue, because there's no point unless you have someone actively loving to bounce and banter and someone that's open to change. So to resolve it, the first thing that Denise would say is, I 100% accept you as you are, Mum, in your mind. You don't have to say that to her personally. Doesn't mean you like her, doesn't mean she's like easy for you to manage, doesn't even mean that you're okay with her behavior. It just says, I accept you as you are, because that's what you are. If I don't accept you, I'm not accepting reality. Next step is, I don't give you permission to hijack my limbic brain. This is in my coaching class I teach. I have, there's a gap. I want you to be here, you're here. But it's like me saying, I have a glass of water in my hand, I want it to be coffee. It's never going to be coffee unless I go and make coffee. So you have to accept what it is and say, I don't give you permission to hijack my brains. Before you get on that call to your mother, it's like, I don't need her to be anything different than she is. And I don't give her permission to make me feel bad today. I'm going to redirect the conversation 50 times back to something happy. I can then ask to do something about it. I could say, hey mum, I'm noticing this conversation is going negatively, or I'm not comfortable with this, or can we change the conversation, or could I ask you to do blah? But if she doesn't, go back to step number one. I accept you as you are. And that's as simple as it is, because as soon as you do that, you actually relinquish this need to fix it or for them to be different, because it's a 50-50 whether they do it. Um, there is a step saying I can choose to let you go, call you less, spend less time with you, or like Nicole, recognize that my friend is married or partnered with someone that's not great, and I'll spend less time. Or if they're really destructive, I'll actually let them go. If someone's a sociopath, run. If they're really destructive, don't try and like work it out, go, or spend less time, or even better, only spend time with them when there's enough fuel in your tank. If you're
Yeah.
feeling happy and nourished, that's when you call your mom, not when you're feeling really tired and drained, because guess what? You're not going to feel very good with her conversation, and you're probably not going to have the energy to switch it up. So this is about you being in command of your private world. It's not the public world, it's the private world. You need to really, really own how you show up in your private world, your own world of thought and feeling and perception. And you always have to come back to, how do I feel? What am I going to do? How is this triggering me? Not this needs to change, or they're not a good person, or I need to do something about it. It doesn't mean you can't take action. It's just that if the action doesn't give you what you want, go back to step number one. So then this comes to the last part, which is not a lot of slides, but the higher mind mastery. So we need to learn the traps of the lower mind, which is I need to fix someone, or I need to make it okay. And we need to be able to access higher mind stuff, which means I live with this higher, wiser perspective. Because if we live in the day-to-day lower mind, when it comes to relationship conflict, we're going to get stuck a lot. So how does that even happen? Well, private world, public world, it really comes down to this. And again, this is in one of my coaching slides. It's like, well, do you want to live in this private world where you're in command of your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, how you hold your shape, how you show up? Or do you want to be at the beck and call of the public world, which is, you can't control the public world. You just can't control it. You can go out and create action, and you can go out and say your yeses and nos, and you can make decisions on which friends you hang out with and which family members give you more love and energy. For example, I've got two sisters. One of them's really beautiful and nourishing, the other one not so. I spend time with my nourishing sister more so. You can make those decisions all the time. But what ultimately happens is if you can't come back to your private, still commanding, wise inner self, then you will probably get hijacked along the way by other people. And so then I thought, well, what actually blocks your higher mind? So, if we go back to this like beautiful image on the left, this calm, commanding, what blocks our higher mind? What actually holds us back from achieving this more ascended, like happier, healthier state? Because you need to get to higher mind when you deal with relationship issues. If you can't get there, it's very hard to deal with them unless you take that like radical cut you out of my life. But like we just said, a lot of people we can't, and we shouldn't want to just do that as a reckless thing, because we'll probably lose everyone ultimately, because someone's going to trigger you at some point, right? So for those of you that have done my coaching course, you've seen this, the two types of fears that we have. And this is really important to remember. We have fear of the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We're worried about the future. We have fears around, what's my dad going to do when I show up, and that, is he going to be angry today, or fear of judgment. What will he say? What happens if our relationship's not smooth? Those are the two types of fears that we always have. And those fears are lower mind fears because they're based on control. We're trying to control. And the ultimate form of relationship conflict comes down to you wanting to control what the other person thinks or says or does. That's the ultimate issue with relationships. We want to control how they show up, what they say, whether we have a good time, whether we don't, whether they agree with my opinions. When we post something on social media, we want people to like our comments, not like smash them. It's normal, but we want to control it. We want to control what people think about us, how they receive us, whether they like us. Um, so control and fear are best friends together and your worst enemy, which really means that um, if we actually work on the control issue, we figure this whole thing out. Toxic relationships and conflict only sizzle you when you're trying to control something. When you actually let go, step back to yourself and figure it out within you in your higher mind, what happens in the external doesn't really matter.
Can you just repeat that? I'm sorry. That last
Okay.
statement.
When we let go of control, when we let go of control and not worry about fixing the other, changing them, sorting it out, being another way than what it is, and we come back to our inner self, our higher mind, and we work out how we want to be in relation to them, what shadows are being triggered, what we're doing within ourselves, and come back to a peaceful state in there. It doesn't matter what happens in the external because it'll resolve itself. We have to work on our inner state because you can't change someone and you can't fix it. What you can do is work on your inner state and how you reply and relate, and then it'll either naturally fix it or they won't even come into your field. It won't even bother you. Therefore, the problem goes away because it's your perception of it that makes it hijack you or not hijack you. If someone is abusing you, like physically or mentally or psychological, and they're sociopathic, run. I'm not saying stick around, that like leave. Like that, if someone's truly a sociopath and a psycho, you need to leave. You need to run. I don't advocate staying with those people. But if it's just the everyday conflict and grittiness with someone, that's an inside job for you. There are decisions that you can make, like I don't want to hang out with him if my tank's not full, or I'm going to spend less time, or I need to say what I need to say and then back off a little bit. They're all valid, but they still don't change the person. The person will only change if they want to change. So when you realize it's your perception that needs to shift, then life's a lot easier. So, for example, this is a workplace scenario. Lower mind will say, why is Bob from accounts being a jerk to me? And this actually happens to one of my clients in LA. She's got like this worst ever lawyer and accountants that give her a really hard time. The higher mind might say maybe Bob's having a bad time at home because he's been acting badly at work, or what behavior is Bob reflecting to me about myself that's unresolved, or I don't need to fix Bob. Simple as that. That's the difference. Why is this happening to me? And that's really annoying versus, I don't know, maybe he's got something else going on, or maybe he's showing me something that's like unresolved within me, or but does it really even matter? Maybe I just don't need to worry about Bob's bad behavior and just drop my accounts off and then leave. An internal one would be, I'm too nervous to get up on stage to present to strangers. I must be like really unconfident and crap, versus, I've got fear around being judged, which means I'm trying to control what everyone thinks about me. The problem is with my control levels, not public speaking. Did that start as a kid? That's the difference in our thinking. Rather than I'm crap at public speaking or I'm unconfident, if you actually look deeper, there's an issue around judgment and control. There's an issue around what you think people are going to say about you. And it probably started when you were younger. That's the difference with the higher mind. The higher mind doesn't just go straight to a judgment of they shouldn't be like that or I shouldn't be like that. It actually looks around, what is this really showing me? What's the field showing me? That's the difference. There's something in here for me that's food. And if I can just eat it, I might actually get my needs met. So that means, you need to start thinking the universe is happening for me, not to me. Maybe Marcy's dad's showing her about not needing to control someone's feelings or emotions. Maybe it's showing her that she can have different conversations with someone rather than physically, and then they can be done in spirit. That's another way to communicate. Maybe it's showing her that, parents aren't this Hollywood version that we all think they should be. Yes, Maria? Do you want to ask something?
Oh, yes, sorry. I just had a quick interjection
Yes.
when about the statement that if someone's a psychopath showing psychopathic tendencies in a relationship, like for example, a marriage, just run. Sometimes you can't run because it's like run where?
When I mean
You
run,
need
I mean if you're in,
resources.
yeah,
You
so
need
forget them.
resources, you need financial resource. You can't just run because you'll be on the street.
Well, I
So it's not
mean,
that easy to leave sometimes like psychopathic situations in a relationship.
well, if it's
It really
psychopathic
isn't.
and dangerous, then would you rather be dead or on the street? That's a
I
direct
don't know. I
question.
mean, that's not something that neither.
No,
I shouldn't have to.
yeah,
I mean, a
no,
person shouldn't have to choose between death or destitution, but they do, and most oftentimes people pick. They don't pick destitution. They'd sooner take the risk
yeah. But I
and
guess
end up dying.
I'm not necessarily specifically speaking to domestic violence in this case, or I'm probably
Yeah.
speaking more to if someone's really, such bad behavior that they're abusing you on some sort of level.
Mhm.
Then when I say run, I do mean like
Mhm.
move away from that person. But I
Mhm.
do have someone at the moment that has been through domestic violence, and she has left her partner
Mhm.
and put herself at, financial risk, but
Mhm.
it is right for her because she's in danger.
Mhm.
But there is,
Yeah.
there's those rare cases where people are in that super danger period. But I'm talking about if someone is a really, sociopathic tendency type
Mhm.
person, the best thing is to run away in terms of leave the relationship, leave the friendship, stop talking to the
Mhm.
family member. It's about that distance. And I think there's an absolute reason to make absolute cutting of ties with people if they're highly abusive. But most of the
Mhm.
time, we're talking about gritty relationships with people that we know.
Yeah, rather than that. Oh,
Yeah,
okay, cool. No, I just wanted to clarify. That's all.
yeah. But I'm an advocate if you're being abused domestically, is you need to get away. You need to go to police. You need to go to. There are resources out there for people.
Mhm.
Well, there are in Australia. I'm not sure about the States.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the access in your higher mind is the universe is happening for me, not to me. Because as soon as you think that it's happening to you, you put yourself into a state of, oh, I can't solve it. Well, actually, it's happening for my evolution. The conflict I have with my friend, partner, family member is showing me something unresolved. It's time to take a look at it. Maybe I'm trying to fix them. Maybe I'm trying to make it okay. Um, if they are sociopathic, as I said, like maybe it's just moving away, like leave that friendship, leave that work culture. I've had people that are in really, really difficult work cultures leave, leave if it becomes really tricky. And obviously, self nourishment. When I nourish myself and take time to slow down and be present, I can then get the space to calmly review my conflicts with the other and to decide whether to uninvite them to the table, which is kind of that leave them, resolve my own temper, build better boundaries, or communicate a new way of relating to them. That's what you're looking to do. You either say, I don't want to hang out with that person. I need to resolve my conflict with them. I need to build a better boundaries or boundary, and I need to communicate in new ways. That's what the higher mind would ask of you. It doesn't say fix it or say everything that's on my mind and have conflict more. It says I need to look within and figure out how I want to now relate to that person because it's probably going to be in a very different way than you have before. It's an opportunity to evolve. The higher mind doesn't try to fix the other. The higher mind realizes the power is actually within you, which is in your control to then sort it out. So it's a really important distinction. If we try and fix the other, then we've jumped into the public, the external, and we've jumped into the fix it, and we've let them hijack us. Because while ever they're not fixed, we'll be in stress. So as soon as we let go of the fixing and step back, we're not in as much stress. So your call to action would be, and we're near the end and we'll do some questions. Is your mind wrangled? Do you know how to access your higher mind? Do you have those tools to sit in your higher mind and ask those powerful questions when you're having conflict with someone? What fear is your go-to fear? Is it that judgment you're worried about or the unknown? Like, is it that you're worried that someone won't take you a certain way or see that you're not right or judge you or be angry at you? Or is it the unknown? You don't know what's going to happen if you put a boundary in place. Or when a conflict does occur, how well do you flip it and realize there's a gift and a lesson for your own personal evolution? Do you just stay angry and upset and in chaos, or do you realize this is an opportunity to like bust out of your confines and actually evolve? Because that's really what conflict delivers to us. It's an opportunity to evolve. And are you trying to over control the public or external world outcomes and avoid your private world of command? Because whenever we stay in the public world trying to fix what's in front of us on an action oriented level, we're avoiding sitting in this more peaceful, higher, wise self. And it is very easy to be distracted by everything going on around us and fighting with that, and then not actually sitting in ourselves. So that would be some questions that you could ask yourself. And today, if you only have one light bulb moment, that's gold. So think of something that you took on today that was important. You don't need to take it all in, but something that really stood out for you that you could take on and really go, yeah, I'm going to practice that in my everyday life. Yeah, that would be super cool to think of one thing. I'm going to open up to Q&A in a sec. And of course, those of you that have done my coaching course, you've already looked at a lot of these lessons. But if you haven't done it and you're interested in doing something where you really delve into these subject matters more and more deeply, yeah, I highly recommend working on yourself in whatever form that is. It's so important to start to realize how you can take command of your own reality.